Okay. Um, you wrote Snead's biography,
Yes.
among many other books.
Yeah, a lot of books.
Um,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about Sam. What can you tell about Sam Snead?
Well, Sam Snead was a lot more complicated and interesting man than people took him for. He was always looked at as kind of a natural, gifted guy who didn't know what he was doing with the golf club. He just had this gift of rhythm and power and whatnot. Not true. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he thought about. He hit as many practice balls as Ben Hogan, I guarantee you. And he just had, but he did have great gifts of timing. Um, he was not. There was a, he never won the U.S. Open, and that just killed him all his life. He had came very close a few times. The very first time he played, he made that terrible. Well, no, he was leading. It was in Oakland Hills in Detroit, and it looked like he was going to win it. And this was in 1937, the first Open he ever played in. And Ralph Gouldall made a rush in the last on the back nine and beat him out by a shot. But I mean, that was okay. I mean, the guy came in and got hot and beat him. But the next year, he played in Philadelphia, and not knowing any better, he was playing very well, and he came to the last hole, par five, and wasn't sure. There were no scoreboards in those days, and he hadn't heard what the other guys were doing. But he felt he needed a birdie, and as it happened, he didn't. But that's part of the story. Anyway, he hit a driver and he hit it in the rough, not bad, but he decided to play a brassy out of kind of rough grass
Wow.
because he felt he had to get home. And he didn't hit the ball well at all. He put it in the bunker, played it poorly out of the bunker. Then he was in the side, another bunker, and he hit it a couple of times in that bunker, and he ended up making an eight on the hole and lost by a shot. And that just killed him. And I think that stayed with him the rest of his days. He came close a few more times in the Open, but I remember asking Byron Nelson why Sam never won the Open. And he said, well, I think one reason was he never prepared for it. He never changed his game to suit, the Open courses were set up differently than the tour courses. They were narrower. They play them on, big time tough golf courses, and they made them a little tougher. And you had to take a 2-iron on some holes to keep the ball in play rather than a driver. But Sam wouldn't do that. He said, well, he once told Bob Ross, he told me, he said, if I can't win it the way I won all the other ones, then the hell with it. but but that was part of the reason why. But he also had a psychological problem finally with the U.S. Open. But he was an interesting guy. He was probably never read a book all the way through. Loved boxing. He was in Morocco to play an exhibition or a tournament for seniors, and the King of Morocco had his big dinner for all the players and everybody. The King of Morocco, and Sam didn't go. He stayed in his room and watched the fights on television. He loved boxing, and he loved boxing more than sitting in a huge dinner with the King of Morocco. And he was a great hunter and fisherman. People down in Hot Springs, where he grew up, they always considered him more of a sportsman, a hunter and a fisher, and then golf was just the way he made his living. But he could be cranky. He can be tough. The more he was away from home, away from Hot Springs, the crankier he would get. And but he was an interesting guy. He understood himself better than I thought, better than a lot of people thought. And he had an odd marriage. I mean, Sam was a famous womanizer, and his wife knew all about it. But they stayed together. Um, you wonder why sometimes. Um, he had a retarded son, which broke his heart all his life. It was just a terrible thing for him. The boy probably was autistic, but it was in the 1950s and nobody knew anything about it at the time. And I have a picture of the boy. He's not a boy anymore. He's a grown man. He's in his 50s. And no one had ever seen him. Sam would never talk about him. in all the other books that Sam uh, sort of biographical, but he would only mention that he had a son who had some problems and he never talked about it. But I went to visit the fella and he was a big kid, big guy, and he was light on his feet like Sam. And, but he was autistic and it was difficult to talk with, but quiet, nice, gentle fellow. But Sam, it broke Sam's heart all his life. He dealt with that and wanted to make sure. I remember he wanted to make sure that he left enough money to take care of that boy for the rest of his life. And so he was a sensitive guy in many ways. The people didn't realize that. They just saw the public figure, this jaunty guy and kind of a cranky, get angry on the golf course stuff. Yeah, I liked Sam at the end. He was good.
What about what do you attribute Sam's longevity to? I mean, he contended. I think he won at Greensboro, the oldest player
50s.
ever to win on tour, and
Yep.
even into the later
19,
days when he was in his
1973, he was 50. He was 51 years old, and he finished in the Open. As a matter of fact, he played in the Open and had a pretty good finish. I think he was tied around 14th or something like that. Why? He was a great athlete. He was gifted physically. His arms were a little longer. You know, I've studied this over the years. All the really super great athletes. Ted Williams had unusually acute vision, 10/20 vision. Jimmy Connors, tennis great, same thing. They could see the ball better. Williams could see the ball better than most people. Um, Sam Snead had a little extra long arms, and he had this incredible flexibility. And people always said, "Well, Sam's double jointed." And I remember mentioning that to Sam. I said, "What's with the double jointed?" He said, "Well, there are no double joints." He was just happened to be a very flexible person. I think Johnny Bulla, who was a very good friend of Sam, they grew up on the tour together, went out on the tour together in the earliest days. And Bulla made a study of a lot of different things, and he thought that Sam just was somehow gifted with extra long ligaments that allowed him to stretch and have the length of swing and the agility that he had. And there's probably something to that.
Do you think was he a dancer because he had
Ah,
such an incredible sense of rhythm?
he did.
So
He played. He played the trumpet. He played cornet. He could also play guitar. He grew up. All of his family were in music. I mean, they didn't study music, and they didn't go to any music schools, but they just knew how to play. And his brothers and his father, they would sometimes fill in with the orchestra that played at the hotel there at the homestead in Hot Springs when he was growing up. And he was a nice singer, but he had music in him, and no question about it. And I think that led in some part to his wonderful rhythm and tempo that he had.
great. Um, okay, so let's get into a little bit of your putting.
Uh-huh.
But before I go any further, the book, the title of the book is the Snead book.
The final word on putting.
Okay, that's the
Oh,
putting
you
book.
mean
What about the Snead?
Sam? It's called Sam, the
Uh-huh.
one and only Sam Snead, and it's out in paperback now. And so you can get it that way, a little better price. It's in bookstores, but you can also get it at Amazon and Amazon.com.
We'll put a link to either Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com, probably Amazon.com. That'll link
Yeah,
our readers directly to your book, to
good.
the Snead book.